I had an experience, and I was telling you all last week that I've gotten on this little jag of coming up with a title for. I think it's good to have a title for a Dharma talk. So the title that I came up today was, well, I don't know exactly, something about like who let the fox in the hen house, or maybe it doesn't have to be who let the fox in the hen house. That's pithy, isn't it? This was an interesting experience for me, and it was. I wanted to share it because I think it is part of what we're all trying to do. There's this term in Mahayana Buddhism, cultivating the mind, and it certainly fits as well as in Theravadan Buddhism. So let's see if I want to read that. I guess I'll just read it before I start. This is probably my old favorite guy, Chinul. And he said, some people, not knowing the essential emptiness of good and evil, think practical cultivation of the mind means to sit rigidly, immobile, subduing mind and body like a rock placed on top of grass. So, as we're sitting, it's like sometimes, we're sitting immobile and subduing the mind and the body, and perhaps to some extent we're like a rock placed on grass, on top of grass. And then he says that's ludicrous. In other words, he doesn't like that idea, right? He said that's why it is said that followers who are doing this practice cut off confusion in every state of mind. And this is sort of like cultivating the practice of, like, you have a bad thought, you get rid of it, right? You see the mind, your unskillful thoughts, you cut them off at the pass, so to speak. And he says, yet the mind that does the cutting off is a thief. That's the fox in the hen house. The mind that does the cutting off, so the mind that says, well, this is a bad thought, I've got to get rid of that. Of course, they could just as easily then say, this is a good thought, I need to nurture that, right? So it could be said, perhaps, that any thought that you have or I have that I don't recognize as a thought is problematic. Whether it's good or bad, it doesn't matter. So I've always thought one of the most really remarkable statements I've ever read, talk about bragging, was the Buddha, because I think he bragged a lot. The Buddha said, this is such an amazing thing that he said. He said, what I want to think, I think. And what I don't want to think, I do not think. Oh my God. You want to try that one on for size? What I want to think, I think. What I don't want to think, I do not think. Okay, so I'm going down this, I have to go get in my old Saturn, Well, I have to think about, if I want to get in my Saturn, and turn the, my remote is now torn up, unfortunately. So I have to use a key to unlock the door. So if I want to do that, I probably do have to think, right? Probably. So that might be an example of something I want to think. But what I don't want to think, then, if according to the Buddha, I don't think. That is an extraordinary statement of skill. Extraordinary skill, isn't it? And you could argue that to some extent that's what we're doing, what we're trying to do here. We're trying to hone this ability to watch without judgment. Watch without judgment. Yeah? Do we agree with that? And the problem is, like again going to Chinul saying, we sitting and trying to subdue the mind, and sort of like sitting, like a rock on top of grass, is not necessarily honing this skill of watching, which implies alertness. Right? It implies that you're sitting with alertness. That's really, I've been sort of saying this for 2 or 3 weeks. It's really paradoxical, isn't it? how do you sit with alertness without slipping off into agitated or restlessness, right? And or if you go into more of silence and calmness, how do you then not fall asleep? So that's the conundrum of sitting. But anyway, so watchfulness that is alert is to some extent that cultivated skill of being able to watch the mind, watch what's going on. So now here we come to the personal, where I show my what. So 2 Sundays ago, I think it was, so I gave this Dharma talk, and as those of you who were here know that the camera was on the blink. And I had worked for about like that morning. I mean, it was going to be Repeating Ourselves. It was a great Dharma talk. It was just great. The title, Repeating Ourselves. Isn't that just kind of like, that's pithy. So I liked it. So I've been working on it, which for me is pretty unusual. I tend not to do this. I just wing it. That's actually the theme song of all people with attention deficit disorder. We wing it. And, and then we make it sort of like, it's like we brag about it as if, we're so spontaneous. It's not really true. It's kind of a desperation for really out of an inability to really concentrate and plan. But we gussy it up and it looks very good. So, I'll say, I don't have these laminated Dharma talks these other teachers do, which I don't like, I wing it. I have original talks. And so, unfortunately, that's actually covering up the fact that I tend to not be able to have a laminated talk. So anyway, I had a laminated talk, at least metaphorically. I spent about 2 hours on it. It was really good. Repeating ourselves. You shouldn't smile so much. So here I come, and I'm all ready, and then Eric, is standing there, and it's not working. And it's Brad. And then so those of you who were here, do you remember the speaker it started this huge scream. We'd all been sitting for 45 minutes in silence, and that thing went off. It was like awful. Well, so then I rang the bell, so there was going to be no Dharma talk. I rang the bell, and as I was sitting there, I thought, well, this is really what I've put on my plate. Right? It's like, I'm sitting there. I was really pissed off. I wanted to murder Brad. I don't mean that figuratively, by the way. I mean I wanted to murder Brad. And I'd already gotten angry with Travis the week before because we lost another Dharma talk in Pasadena called Tracing Back the Radiance. I love the idea, that I'm talking about tracing back the radiance while I'm thinking about murdering Travis and Brad and Eric. You could say there's a little bit, right, of a kind of a dissonance about that, but never mind. So anyway, I became aware of the anger. I sat with the anger. I watched the anger. I watched the angry thoughts, and they dissipated very quickly. So I was very proud of myself. And I said that was sort of like the Dharma talk. So I was talking about, that's what was on my plate. So that was the end of that. Even though that was not the planned Dharma talk, it turned out just fine. Unfortunately, it was not video. Or maybe it was, who knows. So at any rate, I was feeling pretty good about myself. I thought, gee, this stuff works. This practice really works. I sat there, I recognized there was anger. I watched it, and it sort of slowly dissipated. I was very happy. That was the day it was 90 degrees here. So I went home, and this is where the story begins. And this is how I hope will be of use to some of you. So it was 90 degrees, and I have this little portable air conditioner that cools approximately 4 feet in any direction. And that's it. And so I remember at one point that in the evening I was sweating like a horse, and I thought, I've always wondered why they talk about old people. Have you worried about old people in the heat? I've always thought about that. Though, what is that? What do they talk about? That old people should not be. And I got it. I thought, oh my God, I'm about to die. This heat is just awful. It was very unpleasant, and so perhaps some of the physical discomfort triggered that memory in the back. But at some point that night, I started ruminating back on what had made me angry. And so then, and so I started ruminating on more than one thing that had made me angry. I mean, in terms of the Dharma talks, the ones that were lost, etc. So I started watching the mind just slipping into reactivity and anger and unpleasantness. And so I'm fairly I'm fairly accustomed to equanimity, more or less. So when the mind is not equanimous, it's pretty shocking to me and pretty upsetting. So this was really upsetting in 90 degrees. So I worked with it, and I was as I had said, I'd been thinking, I'd already worked with it at the morning when I had been so proudly explaining to everybody how I had worked through it during the sit. Well, unfortunately, I was not working through it in the evening, and so I was, I was in it felt pretty shitty, just the truth. It felt pretty bad. I was not happy. I was not happy with myself. I was not happy. And so then, by the grace of God, I fell asleep. Fell right asleep, right in the midst of my anger. And then woke up probably about maybe an hour and a half later. It was still 90 degrees. And my mind was absolutely still and quiet. And this beautiful, it was like, like as a Chanul describes your mind as calm, right, empty, and numinous. All minds, the one mind. He also calls it sometimes the true mind. The true mind of all sentient beings. It's calm. It's numinous. It's aware. So anyway, that happened. I woke up and I was lying there in bed, and I thought, how is it possible to have felt so yucky, go to sleep and wake up and feel in this just a wonderful, beautiful state of mind? Well, it's wonderful. I think some of you all have noticed that, haven't you? Do you wake up some mornings and you can't believe how nice it is just to wake up right in your mind? That's not just me, is it? Don't you all have moments of waking up with quietness and clarity in your mind? Sam, you don't? So a little bit. So anyway, that was just very lovely, and it was 92 degrees by then. So I thought, I better get me a little something to drink. So I managed to get out of the bed, and I stumbled into the kitchen, and I got some very nice, cool drink. This probably took 4 minutes, maybe 4 minutes, maybe 3 minutes. It's not a big apartment, so let's say 3 minutes. So then I go back to bed. As I lay down, I was back in the very same place. I wanted to kill everybody that I knew. Seriously homicidal. And then, so how's that possible, right? Here I have been in this transcendent, beautiful state, loving everybody. I lie down, and then 3 minutes I was really back, and I was going back to Brad not knowing how to turn that machine on. We lost the Dharma talk in Pasadena. I am surrounded by incompetence. The world has it in for me, right? What is the problem? Why am I surrounded by incompetence? So, there I was, right? Steaming. I fell asleep again. This is all true, by the way. This is just 2 Sundays. I fell asleep one more time. Woke up feeling quiet. The mind went right back into that calm place. went right back into that calm, empty, luminous luminosity. It's really the truth. Well, I'm getting tired of this stuff. So I woke up, I thought, oh my God. So I decided to go up to the refrigerator and have something else cold because it was still hot. So here I go again, walking towards the refrigerator. Now here's the moment of maybe a slight revelation. As I near the refrigerator, I start realizing that the mind was just beginning to say, and by the way, and da 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 da. Very subtle. Very subtle. If I had not been practicing for 40 years, I would not have noticed it. I wouldn't have heard it at all. Right? Same with you all. But I just, even before I got to the refrigerator, I just started listening. The fox was in the hen house. And I was on my way to being angry again. So I thought, oh my God, it's that subtle narrative that you don't notice or that I don't notice. It feels so close. In the teaching, in the Chanel says, it's like your brother. It's like your nearest brother. It's so close and so intimate to me, I don't notice it. Right? There it was. So obviously it disappeared for only one reason. I did not stop it, because that would be going back to the same thing as that would have been actually in a sense the thief stopping it. Awareness just simply appeared. Prajna, prajna is the word for wisdom. A wisdom just arose. So it vanished. And it never came back, right? That was it. I mean, it's like it took me I had to do it 3 times. But so from that moment, as that happened, and obviously, I suppose you all know that I am not proclaiming that this is the end of anger. I'm not actually proclaiming anything. I'm simply saying that it occurred to me that narrative or that chatter or that dialogue is exactly like a thief sneaking into the hen house. Exactly. And we don't hear it. We don't see it. It's so subtle, and it feels like me. It feels like whatever this me is, this whatever that is. It feels so real that there's nothing that sets back. There's nothing to look at it. Which is awareness. There's not awareness to just see that. Oh my, there it is. And so then you give it 3 sentences and you're gone. 3 little sentences and you're gone. I would have been gone in 3 sentences or 4, But I mean, because I'd already done it. It already pulled me down one time already. So, there are many different descriptions of the fox in Buddhism, and what I'm going to say is that this is the way I would say it, right? Somebody, I'm sure, says it even in one of those wonderful sutras or scriptures. But actually, the fox is ignorance. It's actually ignorance. And avijja. And avijja, as you all know, if you've studied, right, avijja is the first chain of the link of 12 in dependent origination. Avijja begins. Then out of avijja, next, it's going to come the formations, and then before you know it, we're on our way. So So there's one wonderful sutra, or not a sutra, the writing of one of the great teachers, who says that the cure for any ailment is to just have one moment, one mind moment of seeing ignorance, seeing ignorance in one mind moment. If you see it, the mind absolutely opens up. The problem is that it is so unbelievably subtle. It's so subtle. It convinces me that my thoughts are me. You know, it doesn't matter what it is. I'm going to go have an In-N-Out burger. It doesn't matter what it is. The thought is me. And that's the beginning of ignorance. That's the beginning of it. So, what are you thinking right this minute? What's the thought is going on in your mind right this minute? What's important is to see it. It's just to see whatever it is. See the thought. Watch it. Just be with it. And you can't force awareness. You can't force prajna. You can't force awareness to arise in you. All you can do is to be available to it, to be available so that it can rise, and it will rise, just in that non-judgmental watching, just watching without judgment, which is that we can all do. Everybody here can do that. I can do that. You can do that. We can all practice and develop non-judgmental awareness. Just that watching. Now, think about that. We sat for 45 minutes. Mm-hmm. How much of that was non-judgmental watching as opposed to spacing out? Did anybody space out in 45 minutes? Did anybody space out in, 30 minutes? Just think about that. The idea of sitting for 45 minutes, alert and awake and watching, non-judging, not spacing out, not zoning into what they call blankness. Blankness is what Chanel calls it, right? Blankness is simply sitting in silence or quiet without alertness. Right? Without alertness, watching, knowing, watching yourself. So that's our job, and that's what we can do. And so I'm finished. So I just wanted to share that with you one more time. It was amazing to me to be quiet enough to watch that little fox creep into the hen house. It was amazing. I thought, oh my, and wonderful. And so, ever since then, that's 2 weeks. So ever since then, I've sort of cultivated a little bit more, just being available to watching that, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, standing in line, driving, watching that little, I was thinking, what is it? Of all said words of tongue or pen, the saddest of these, it might have been. Now I was thinking, of all sad words of tongue or pen, the saddest are these, I am right. I am right, damn it. I mean, isn't that just the saddest thing, right? Because if you say I am right, doesn't that also mean and you're not? Unless you agree with me, and then we're both right. So that's all I have to say, and thank you.